My name is Rachel Wilson, and at 35, I thought I had everything figured out. A successful career as a financial analyst, a beautiful home in Chicago, and a 7-year marriage to Eric that everyone envied. Then came that text message, "I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old babe. I've already emptied our joint account, haha." While most would panic, I simply replied, "Good luck." What Eric didn't know was that his little stunt had activated a plan I'd been quietly preparing for months. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about turning betrayal into triumph. Eric and I met at a charity fundraiser for children's education 8 years ago. I was there representing my investment firm, while he attended as the marketing director for Lux Brands, a high-end retailer. I remember him approaching me at the bar, all confidence and charm in his tailored navy suit. "That donation you just made could fund 3 classrooms," he said, raising his glass to me. I admire someone who puts their money where their values are. His genuine interest in my work rather than just my appearance caught my attention. We spent the entire evening in a corner, discussing everything from financial markets to our favorite hiking trails in Michigan, where we both grew up. By the end of the night, we'd planned our first official date. Our romance progressed quickly. Within 3 months, we were practically living together, merging our book collections and arguing good-naturedly about whose coffee maker made the superior brew. Eric was ambitious, intelligent, and seemed to genuinely support my career ambitions. When he proposed 6 months later during a sunrise hike at Starved Rock State Park, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our wedding at a vineyard in Napa Valley was everything I dreamed of but never thought I needed until Eric. 200 guests watched as we exchanged vows under a canopy of twinkling lights and grapevines. My father, who rarely showed emotion, wiped tears as he walked me down the aisle. Eric's vows included promises to always celebrate your success as my own and build a life where we both thrive. Those words would later haunt me. We purchased a 4-bedroom brownstone in Lincoln Park, a prestigious Chicago neighborhood that signaled our arrival as a power couple. The house needed renovations, which we tackled together on weekends, turning the 3rd floor into a home office where I could work late without disturbing Eric. We furnished it with pieces we discovered at local artisan markets and antique stores, each item carefully chosen to reflect our shared aesthetic. My career at Hamilton Financial Partners flourished. I specialized in sustainable investment strategies, helping clients build portfolios that aligned with their values while delivering impressive returns. Each promotion came with longer hours, but also greater satisfaction as I watched my clients' wealth grow alongside my own. Within 4 years of our marriage, I was managing a portfolio worth over $300 million. Eric's career at Lux Brands seemed equally promising initially. He oversaw successful campaigns for their expansion into European markets and received recognition at industry awards. We celebrated each other's wins with weekend getaways to Michigan's wine country or dinner at Alinea, Chicago's 3 Michelin-star restaurant where the staff knew us by name. Among our friends, we were the couple who has it all figured out. We hosted quarterly dinner parties where Eric would showcase his culinary skills, and I would select wine pairings that impressed even our friend Thomas, a certified sommelier. We took annual trips to destinations on our shared bucket list: Kyoto during cherry blossom season, a safari in Tanzania, the Northern Lights in Iceland. For our anniversaries, we established traditions that seemed unbreakable. Each year, we would recreate our first date at the same restaurant, order the same meals, and gift each other something that represented the traditional anniversary gift. For our 5th anniversary, I commissioned a local woodworker to craft a desk for Eric's home office, while he surprised me with wooden frames containing pressed flowers from our wedding centerpieces. The topic of starting a family came up regularly after our 3rd anniversary. We both claimed to want children, but the timing never seemed right. First, I was pursuing my Series 7 certification. Then, Eric was launching a major campaign. Later, we were renovating the kitchen. The conversations became less frequent, then stopped altogether by our 6th anniversary. What I didn't acknowledge then was how my career had significantly outpaced Eric's. By our 6th year of marriage, my annual bonus alone exceeded his entire salary. I purchased a Tesla as a surprise for his birthday, while he gave me designer handbags that, while thoughtful, cost a fraction of what I spent. I never mentioned this disparity, believing our marriage transcended financial scorekeeping. Our Instagram feed showcased exotic vacations, elegant home decor, and affectionate anniversary posts. Another year with my best friend and the smartest woman I know, Eric captioned our 7th anniversary photo. 278 comments congratulated us on setting relationship goals. No one, including me, suspected that the foundation was already cracking beneath the filtered perfection. The first indication that something had shifted came about 8 months before the text that ended our marriage. Eric and I were discussing my potential promotion to senior investment strategist over dinner at home. Instead of his usual enthusiastic support, he pushed his plate away and said, "Must be nice to keep climbing while some of us hit glass ceilings." The comment caught me off guard. "What do you mean? Is something happening at work?" He shrugged, refilling his wine glass for the 3rd time that evening. "Nothing's happening. That's the problem. I've been in the same position for 3 years while you keep soaring. Maybe I should just become a house husband since you're the breadwinner anyway." His tone held an edge I'd never heard before. I tried to reassure him that his career mattered, that he was talented and valued, but something had changed. He started spending more time at the office gym, coming home later with explanations about team building and client entertainment. Around that time, Eric began mentioning new names from work, particularly younger colleagues who had recently joined luxe brands. "Jared thinks we should pivot to influencer marketing," he'd say, or Ashley suggested this amazing rooftop bar for client meetings. The names peppered his conversations with increasing frequency. Our credit card statements began showing unexplained charges at upscale restaurants on days he claimed to be working late. When I casually mentioned a $300 charge at RPM Steak on a Tuesday night, he became defensive. "Are you monitoring my spending now?" It was a client dinner. I forgot to submit the expense report. But the expense report never materialized, and similar charges continued appearing. High-end cocktail lounges, a membership to an exclusive fitness club I'd never heard him mention, clothing stores where items never seemed to make it to our shared closet. Eric's physical appearance began changing too. He bought a new wardrobe without consulting me, trading his traditional business casual style for trendier, younger-looking clothes. He began using expensive skincare products and even mentioned considering Botox just to stay competitive in a youth-obsessed industry. Most concerning were the technology changes. Eric, who had always been transparent with his devices, suddenly added passwords to his phone and laptop. When I needed to use his phone to call a client after mine died, he hovered anxiously, watching every tap of my finger. "Privacy is important in a marriage too," he said when I questioned the change. "We don't need to be in each other's business all the time." Our intimate life withered. Where we once connected physically several times a week, we now went weeks without any meaningful contact. When I initiated, he was too tired or had early meetings. When he occasionally initiated, it felt mechanical, as if checking a box on a to-do list. I attempted several conversations about our relationship over those months. Each time, Eric deflected with practiced ease. "We're just busy, Rachel. This is what happens to couples in their 30s with careers. Not everything needs to be analyzed to death." Then came the incident that transformed my concern into certainty that something was wrong. I returned early from a conference in Boston, hoping to surprise Eric with takeout from his favorite Thai restaurant. The house was empty, but signs of recent occupation were everywhere. 2 wine glasses in the sink, music still playing softly on our sound system, and most tellingly, the scent of an unfamiliar perfume lingering in our bedroom. I called Eric, my heart pounding. He answered on the 4th ring, ambient noise suggesting he was at a restaurant or bar. "Hey, aren't you in Boston until tomorrow?" His voice sounded strained, too high. The closing keynote was canceled, so I caught an earlier flight, I explained, fighting to keep my voice level. "Where are you?" "Just grabbed drinks with the team after a presentation. I'll be home in an hour or so." After we hung up, I sat on our bed, the unfamiliar perfume still detectable on one of the decorative pillows. That night, as Eric slept beside me, I made a decision that would later save me from financial ruin. I would protect myself while gathering information. The next day, I contacted Marie Stevens, a financial advisor I'd met through a women's professional network. Over coffee in a cafe far from my office or home, I asked hypothetical questions about protecting assets in various scenarios. Marie saw through my asking for a friend facade immediately. "Rachel, I've seen that look before. Whatever's happening, you need to start documenting everything now." On her advice, I opened a separate checking account at a different bank and began transferring small amounts from my personal account. I photographed all valuable items in our home and located documentation for everything we owned jointly. I downloaded our complete financial history for the past 5 years and stored it in an encrypted folder. I set up automatic alerts for large transactions on our joint accounts. These precautions felt extreme, even paranoid, but something inside me, the same instinct that had guided my successful investment decisions, told me a storm was coming. I just didn't know how soon it would hit or how destructive it would be. The day that changed everything started like any other Tuesday. I arrived at the office early to prepare for a meeting with our largest client, a family office managing over $1 billion in assets. 20 minutes into my presentation on alternative investment strategies, my phone vibrated with a text notification. Normally, I would never check my phone during such an important meeting, but seeing Eric's name, I worried it might be an emergency. What I read felt like a physical blow. "I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with Ashley. She's 22, fun, and appreciates me. Already emptied our joint account for our fresh start. Lawyer will contact you. Don't try to reach me." The words blurred as I stared at the screen, my body suddenly cold despite the warm conference room. My colleague Marcos shot me a concerned look as I carefully placed my phone face down on the table. "Sorry for the interruption," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Where were we?" Yes, the allocation strategy for emerging markets." I continued the presentation for another 40 minutes, discussing complex financial concepts while my personal life imploded. The clients asked questions, which I answered with clarity that still amazes me when I look back. No one in that room knew that I had just learned my 7-year marriage was over via text message. As soon as the meeting concluded, I excused myself to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and opened my banking app. Our joint account, which had contained $178,000 that morning, now showed a balance of $12.35. The maximum daily withdrawal had been increased and the entire amount transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied my lipstick, and returned to my office. I called our bank and was told that since Eric was a joint account holder, he had every legal right to withdraw the funds. There was nothing they could do. With hands that refused to tremble, I typed Ashley Lux Brands Chicago into my search bar. Her LinkedIn profile appeared immediately. Ashley Reeves, marketing assistant, Lux Brands. 22 years old, recent graduate of Northwestern University. In her professional headshot, she looked exactly like a younger version of me. Dark hair, blue eyes, confident smile. But unlike me at 22, Ashley was dating a married man nearly twice her age. Further searching revealed an Instagram post from 3 days earlier, a woman's hand with a fresh manicure resting on a man's leg in a first-class airplane cabin. The caption read, "Miami bound. Hashtag new chapter, hashtag blessed." The man's watch was clearly visible in the frame, the same Omega Seamaster I had given Eric for our 5th anniversary. I checked our credit card activity online and found charges from 2 Miami real estate agencies, several high-end furniture stores, and a shopping spree at Bal Harbour shops totaling over $12,000 in the past week alone. My office phone rang, interrupting my investigation. It was my sister Jennifer. "Rachel, are you okay?" Eric just updated his Facebook status to "starting a new life with my soulmate in Miami." What the hell is going on? That's how I learned that Eric had announced our separation to the world through social media before I'd even had time to process it myself. Friends and family were calling and texting, asking questions I couldn't answer. The humiliation burned deeper than the betrayal. "Can you come over tonight?" I asked Jennifer, finally allowing my voice to crack slightly. "I'm already packing a bag," she assured me. That evening, I returned to a house that felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. Eric had clearly been busy during my workday. His closet was empty, as was his desk drawer, our shared safe, and oddly, our collection of rare whiskeys valued at over $10,000. The framed photo from our wedding that had stood on his nightstand was gone, but he'd left behind the wooden anniversary desk I'd commissioned, too large to transport quickly. Jennifer arrived with Thai food and wine, ready to help me pick up the pieces. As we sat in my kitchen sorting through what I knew so far, I felt strangely detached, as if watching someone else's life unravel. "He took everything from the joint account," I told her, sipping wine from a glass that still had Eric's fingerprints on it from breakfast. $178,000. Just gone. That's theft, Jennifer exclaimed, her protective instincts flaring. "Not legally. His name was on the account too." I stared at the message on my phone. "He's been planning this, Jen." This wasn't impulsive. That first night alone in our half-empty house, after Jennifer had fallen asleep in our guest room, I sat on the floor of Eric's closet, breathing in the lingering scent of his cologne. For exactly 10 minutes, I allowed myself to feel everything: the shock, the betrayal, the humiliation, the rage. I cried silently, my body shaking with the force of emotions I'd suppressed all day. Then, at exactly midnight, I stood up, washed my face, and opened my laptop. The time for tears had ended. Now was the time for strategy. I sent Eric a simple text: "Good luck. You'll need it." By 7 the next morning, I was sitting in the office of Jessica Martinez, a divorce attorney known for handling high-profile cases with surgical precision. Her assistant had squeezed me in before regular hours after I'd briefly explained my situation over the phone. "He took all the money and ran off with his assistant to Miami," Jessica summarized, reviewing my hastily gathered documentation. "Unfortunately, I see this more often than you'd think." "Fortunately, you came to the right place." "I need to know my options," I said, handing her a USB drive. "This contains all our financial records for the past 5 years, photographs of our belongings, tax returns, everything I could think to include." Jessica raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by my preparedness. "Most clients come in with nothing but tears. This is refreshing." That's when I revealed the first card in my hand. 3 years ago, I opened separate investment accounts in my name only. I've been putting half my bonuses and a portion of my salary into them instead of our joint account. Eric doesn't know about them. Jessica's professional expression didn't change, but I caught the flash of approval in her eyes. After that incident when I came home early and smelled perfume in our bedroom, I started recording some of our conversations where he was acting strangely. Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings. I have about 12 conversations where he discusses late meetings that I later confirmed never happened. I pulled out another folder. We also have a prenuptial agreement that Eric seems to have forgotten about. It states that in case of infidelity, the wronged party is entitled to 70% of shared assets acquired during the marriage. Jessica flipped through the prenup, which had been drafted by my family's lawyer before the wedding. Eric had signed it without much review, telling me he had nothing to hide and everything to give. "This is solid," Jessica confirmed. Now tell me about your joint assets. I provided a detailed accounting. The house in Lincoln Park, purchased primarily with my down payment, but in both our names, investment portfolios we'd built together, artwork and collectibles we'd acquired, vehicles including my Tesla and Eric's Audi, and various bank accounts, most notably the joint account he'd emptied. I've also been in touch with a forensic accountant, I continued. I had suspicions that Eric might be using company funds inappropriately. He sometimes had me look over presentations for his boss, and I noticed discrepancies in some budget slides. Nothing concrete, but enough to warrant investigation. Jessica leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. Most clients are still in shock at this stage. You're already 10 steps ahead in the chess game. I'm a financial analyst. Planning for worst-case scenarios is literally my job, I explained. And I've contributed significantly more to our assets over the years. My salary and bonuses have outpaced Eric's by about 3-to-1 for the past 4 years. For the next 2 hours, Jessica and I developed a comprehensive legal strategy. We would file for divorce on grounds of adultery, with documented evidence. We would request emergency court orders to freeze remaining shared assets. We would demand full financial disclosure and accounting for the missing funds. We would leverage the prenuptial agreement to secure my interests in our home and investments. After leaving Jessica's office, I met with John Parker, the forensic accountant I'd mentioned. He requested access to any financial documents related to Eric that I could legally share. I provided copies of tax returns, credit card statements, and emails where Eric had shared work documents with me for feedback. I'm particularly interested in these expense reports, I told John, highlighting several files. Eric has been claiming client entertainment expenses that don't align with what I know about his clients' preferences and locations. Back at home, I installed security cameras at our house entrances. Though Eric had taken what he most valued, I couldn't be certain he wouldn't return for more items. The cameras would provide evidence of any unauthorized entry and document exactly what he removed. That evening, I received a call from Marie Stevens, the financial advisor who had guided my initial protective measures. I've been thinking about your situation, she said. Have you considered that Eric might try to access other accounts? Credit cards, investment portfolios, retirement funds. Her question triggered a new wave of security measures. I changed passwords on all accounts, even those Eric hadn't shown interest in previously. I contacted our investment firms to place alerts on any withdrawal attempts. I froze joint credit cards and removed Eric as an authorized user on my personal cards. Throughout these frantic days of preparation, I maintained a facade of normalcy at work. I even accepted a challenging new client, throwing myself into research for their portfolio. My colleagues noticed my increased focus, but attributed it to professional dedication rather than personal crisis. Jessica called with an update 3 days after our initial meeting. We've prepared all the necessary filings. We can proceed whenever you're ready. I'm ready now, I said without hesitation. But there's one more piece I want in place first. That final piece was a consultation with Eric's direct supervisor at Lux Brands, scheduled under the guise of a potential professional collaboration. Over coffee at a neutral location, I carefully steered the conversation toward team dynamics and management styles. I've always admired how your company maintains such high ethical standards, I mentioned casually. Especially with financial matters. Mark, Eric's boss, nodded appreciatively. We pride ourselves on transparency. Why do you ask? No particular reason, I replied, then deliberately changed the subject, having planted the seed for future conversations if necessary. By the end of the week, my preparation was complete. Jessica had filed all necessary paperwork. John had begun his forensic analysis. The security system was operational. My separate finances were secured. I had documented everything meticulously, creating copies stored in multiple secure locations. Looking at the comprehensive strategy laid out before me, I felt a calm clarity that surprised even Jessica. Most clients are emotional wrecks at this stage, she commented during our final planning meeting. You're methodical in a way I rarely see. I spent years building a life with someone I trusted completely, I replied. Now I'm using those same skills to protect myself from him. The time for emotions will come later. Right now, I need to be strategic. The following Monday, exactly 1 week after Eric's devastating text, our carefully orchestrated counterattack began. Jessica filed emergency court orders to freeze all remaining shared assets, including our house, investment portfolios, and any accounts Eric hadn't yet emptied. The judge, concerned by the evidence of financial manipulation, granted the orders immediately. Simultaneously, I sent an email to Mark at Lux Brands. The subject line read simply, "Confidential, financial concerns requiring immediate attention." The body contained no accusations, only documented facts, dates when Eric claimed to be entertaining clients who were actually out of town, expense reports for events that never occurred, questionable transfers between company accounts Eric managed. I ended with, "As a financial professional, I felt ethically obligated to bring these discrepancies to your attention." Within hours, Mark's assistant called to schedule an urgent meeting. The company's internal audit team would need to speak with me as soon as possible. The third prong of our strategy involved financial institutions. I reported unauthorized transactions to all banks where we held joint accounts, providing documentation of the suspicious timing and amounts. While they couldn't reverse Eric's withdrawals, they flagged his accounts for potential fraud monitoring. Jessica sent formal documentation to Eric via certified mail, informing him of the divorce proceedings and financial fraud charges being considered. She included detailed evidence of his infidelity, financial misconduct, and the prenuptial agreement he seemed to have forgotten. The first indication that our plan was working came that evening: 6 missed calls from Eric. I didn't answer, instead forwarding them to Jessica as she had instructed. His voicemails started confident, but quickly deteriorated. "Rachel, we need to talk about this like adults." First call: "You're overreacting to a situation you don't understand." Third call: "What the hell did you do? My cards are being declined." Fifth call: "Please call me back. This is getting serious." Sixth call: "The next day, we received notification from Eric's bank in Miami that they had flagged suspicious international transfers he had attempted to initiate. The court orders had arrived just in time to prevent him from moving funds offshore." Ashley's Instagram, which had been filled with Miami Beach photos and champagne toasts the previous week, suddenly went private. However, through a mutual connection, Jennifer was able to see that Ashley's recent posts had shifted dramatically in tone. The latest, posted just hours after Eric's cards were declined, read, "Sometimes what glitters isn't gold. Trust your instincts." Eric's closest friends began distancing themselves publicly. His college roommate Sam, who had been our best man, unfriended Eric on social media and called me directly. "I just want you to know I had no idea what he was planning," Sam said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "This isn't the Eric I thought I knew." One particularly satisfying moment came when I spoke with Eric's parents, who had always treated me like a daughter. His mother Barbara called, distraught after receiving Eric's version of events, which painted him as the victim of a controlling wife. "He said you were financially abusive and he needed to escape," Barbara explained, clearly skeptical of her son's claims. "But that doesn't sound like you at all." I calmly shared the truth, including evidence of the affair and financial theft. By the end of our conversation, Barbara was in tears. "We raised him better than this," she said. "His father and I are ashamed of his behavior." Meanwhile, the private investigator Jessica had delivered his first report, documenting Eric and Ashley's activities in Miami. They had toured luxury condominiums, opened a joint bank account, and spent lavishly on designer clothing and restaurants. The investigator also uncovered something unexpected. Ashley had been involved with at least 2 other executives at Lux Brands before Eric. As these developments unfolded, I received surprising news at work. The promotion I'd been working toward for years was mine. Despite my personal crisis, or perhaps because of the laser focus it had inspired, my professional performance had impressed senior leadership. "Your presentation to the Franklin family was exceptional," my director told me. "They've moved their entire portfolio to our management based largely on their confidence in you." The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and equity partnership, financial security that felt particularly meaningful given recent events. 2 weeks into our counteroffensive, I received my first direct communication from Ashley rather than Eric. It arrived via Instagram message. "I didn't know he was taking your money or that he was still technically married. He told me you were already separated and the divorce was just paperwork. I'm sorry." I didn't respond, instead forwarding the message to Jessica as additional evidence of Eric's deception. The message confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Ashley was realizing that Eric wasn't the wealthy, available man he'd presented himself to be. My quiet satisfaction in watching our plan unfold perfectly was interrupted only by moments of grief for the relationship I had believed in so completely. These moments typically came late at night when the day's strategic moves were complete. I would sometimes find myself looking at wedding photos or recalling happy memories, allowing myself brief periods of mourning before refocusing on the path forward. "You're handling this with remarkable strength," Jennifer commented one evening as we reviewed the latest updates from Jessica. "I'm not sure it's strength," I replied honestly. "It's survival. And perhaps a bit of righteous anger fueling extremely detailed planning." By the end of the 3rd week, Eric's carefully constructed new life was collapsing around him. His attempts to access our frozen assets had failed. His employment at Lux Brands was under serious review pending the internal audit. His new relationship was showing strain under financial pressure. And the legal consequences of his actions were becoming increasingly clear. When he called again, I finally answered, with Jessica listening on speakerphone. "Rachel," he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "We need to talk about this reasonably. Things have gotten out of hand." "I'm listening," I replied calmly. "The money I took, it was technically mine too," he said defensively. "But I understand how it looked. I can explain everything if you'll just meet with me." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I responded, my voice steady. "All communication should go through our attorneys from this point forward." "Attorneys?" "Rachel, this is between us. We don't need to involve lawyers." Jessica nodded approvingly as I continued. "You involved lawyers the moment you emptied our joint account and announced you were leaving the marriage via text message. The papers have been filed, Eric. Check your certified mail." His sharp intake of breath confirmed he hadn't expected such decisive action. "This isn't you, Rachel. You're not vindictive." "This isn't vindictiveness," I corrected him. "This is consequence." The preliminary court hearing was scheduled for exactly 1 month after Eric's text message. I arrived with Jessica, dressed in a conservative navy suit that projected confidence and professionalism. Eric entered the courtroom 15 minutes late, looking nothing like the polished marketing executive I had married. His usual meticulous appearance had deteriorated. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep or excess alcohol, possibly both. His attorney, a flashy Miami lawyer clearly chosen for style over substance, appeared visibly surprised when Jessica presented our evidence. The comprehensive documentation of Eric's financial misconduct, the text messages admitting his infidelity, the prenuptial agreement he'd signed, and the forensic accountant's preliminary findings created a compelling narrative that left little room for dispute. "Your Honor," Eric's attorney attempted, "my client acknowledges some errors in judgment, but maintains that the funds he withdrew were jointly owned marital assets to which he had legal access." The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, peered over her glasses. "Counsel, having legal access doesn't negate the evidence of bad faith presented here. The timing of the withdrawal immediately preceding abandonment of the marriage suggests intent to deprive Ms. Wilson of her fair share. Eric slouched in his chair, avoiding my gaze. I noticed Ashley was not present in the courtroom, a detail Jessica had predicted. The girlfriend rarely shows up once money gets tight, she had explained during our preparation. Sure enough, a quick check of Ashley's Instagram later that day showed her at brunch with a different man, a Miami real estate developer according to his tagged profile. The judge's ruling maintained the freeze on all assets pending final dissolution, ordered a full accounting of the withdrawn funds, and set a schedule for financial disclosure that would expose any additional accounts Eric might have hidden. It was a complete victory for our side, but I took no joy in watching Eric's dejected exit from the courtroom. First round to us, Jessica commented as we gathered our materials. He'll be more willing to negotiate a settlement now. Back at work, I received a call from Mark at Lux Brands. The internal audit had been completed, revealing that Eric had indeed misappropriated company funds for personal expenses and falsified client entertainment reports. I'm calling as a courtesy before our HR department contacts him officially, Mark explained. His employment is being terminated for cause, effective immediately. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied automatically, the polite response masking my complex feelings about Eric's professional downfall. Don't be, Mark said firmly. He violated our trust and our policies. The company may pursue restitution depending on the final audit findings. The termination meant Eric had lost not only his income, but also his health insurance, retirement benefits, and the stock options that had been a significant part of his compensation package. The financial reality of his situation was becoming increasingly dire. This reality was further confirmed when I received notice from a real estate agent in Miami that the luxurious waterfront condo Eric had put a deposit on was back on the market. Without employment verification, his mortgage application had been denied, and the property management had initiated foreclosure proceedings on the deposit. Eric's emails and calls became increasingly desperate as his new life crumbled. Gone was the confident man who had dismissed our marriage with a text message. In his place was someone I barely recognized, pleading for reconciliation, claiming temporary insanity, offering to abandon Ashley and return to Chicago. I made a terrible mistake, he wrote in one particularly lengthy email. I was having a midlife crisis, feeling overshadowed by your success. Ashley was just a symptom of my insecurity. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved. Jessica advised me not to respond to these messages, instead adding them to our growing file of evidence. He's trying to manipulate you emotionally because he's losing on every other front, she explained. 3 months after Eric's departure, I met with his parents at their request. We sat in a cafe near their suburban home, their discomfort evident in how they struggled to meet my eyes. We wanted to apologize in person, Robert, Eric's father, began. Not just for Eric's behavior, which is inexcusable, but for our failure to raise him with better values. Barbara reached across the table to squeeze my hand. We want you to know that we consider you family regardless of what happens with the divorce. Eric's actions don't change how we feel about you. Their sincerity brought the first tears I had allowed myself in public since this ordeal began. Thank you, I said simply. That means more than you know. The final court ruling came down 6 months after Eric's text message. Based on the prenuptial agreement, evidence of adultery, and documentation of financial misconduct, the judge awarded me the house, 80% of our investment portfolios, and required Eric to repay the funds he had taken from our joint account with interest. He was left with his car, personal belongings, and a small portion of our investments, significantly less than he would have received in an equitable division without his misconduct. Eric's financial collapse was complete. Through mutual connections, I learned he had moved from the luxury hotel where he and Ashley had initially stayed to a small apartment in a dangerous neighborhood. Ashley had ended their relationship within weeks of his termination, quickly attaching herself to the real estate developer from her Instagram photos. One rainy Tuesday, 7 months after everything had changed, I received a certified letter with a Miami return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Eric. "Rachel, I know words are inadequate for the harm I've caused you. The life I threw away for a fantasy was built on your love, trust, and partnership, all of which I betrayed. I won't ask for forgiveness I don't deserve, but I want you to know that I recognize the damage I've done. The consequences I'm facing are entirely of my own making. I hope someday you find the happiness you deserve with someone worthy of your extraordinary heart. With sincere regret, Eric." The letter brought no satisfaction, only a quiet acknowledgement that this chapter of my life was truly ending. I placed it in a folder with our divorce papers, a record of a relationship that had once defined my life but would no longer determine my future. With the legal matters settled, I decided to sell our house. Despite winning it in the divorce, the space held too many memories, both beautiful and painful. I purchased a stunning 2-bedroom condo in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, a space that was entirely mine, untouched by the past. As I stood in my new home on moving day, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink, I realized that Eric's betrayal had not destroyed me as he might have expected. Instead, it had revealed a strength and resilience I hadn't known I possessed. When he realized what I'd done, it was already too late, not just for him, but for the woman I used to be, the one who had defined herself in part through his approval and affection. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and, finally, truly independent. 1 year after the text message that ended my marriage, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. My new condo had become a sanctuary, decorated entirely to my taste with no compromises for someone else's preferences. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves housed my expanding collection of financial literature and the fiction I now allowed myself time to enjoy. The second bedroom had become a home office where I often worked late into the evening, not from obligation but from genuine passion for my work. My promotion to Director of Investment Strategy had come with unexpected challenges and rewards. I now managed a team of 6 analysts and had direct responsibility for over $1 billion in client assets. The increased responsibility brought longer hours, but also greater satisfaction as I watched my investment philosophies translate into financial security for our clients. Perhaps the most meaningful development in my professional life was the launch of a financial literacy workshop series specifically designed for women. What began as a single presentation to a local women's networking group expanded into monthly sessions hosted at our firm's conference room. Financial independence is about more than money, I would tell participants. It's about having options, security, and the freedom to make choices based on what you want rather than what you fear. The workshops attracted women of all ages and backgrounds, from college students to retirees, each seeking the knowledge I now recognized as essential. I shared basic investment principles, but also the hard-earned wisdom about protecting oneself financially within relationships. Separate accounts aren't about lack of trust, I explained in one particularly well-attended session. They're about maintaining your identity and security regardless of your relationship status. These workshops brought me into contact with women who became genuine friends rather than the couple friends who had populated my social circle during my marriage. Amanda, a pediatrician going through her own divorce, became a regular hiking companion. Zara, a technology entrepreneur, introduced me to rock climbing, an activity I would never have considered during my marriage. Rebecca, a literature professor, invited me to join her book club, expanding my reading beyond financial texts. Through these new friendships, I discovered parts of myself that had been dormant during my years with Eric. I found I enjoyed spicy food, which Eric had always avoided. I developed a passion for documentary films, which he had dismissed as boring. I even took a solo trip to Japan, navigating Tokyo's complex subway system and discovering hidden temples in Kyoto without compromising on itinerary or schedule. 6 months into my new life, I received an unexpected call from Barbara, Eric's mother. After our coffee meeting during the divorce proceedings, we had maintained occasional contact through holiday cards and brief emails. "I hope I'm not overstepping," she began hesitantly, "but I've been thinking about those financial workshops you mentioned. I realize at 63 that I know almost nothing about our investments. Robert has always handled everything." This conversation led to a private session with Barbara, where I helped her understand her current financial situation and develop a basic plan for greater involvement and security. "I wish I'd done this 40 years ago," she confessed as we reviewed her newly organized financial documents. "Not because I don't trust Robert, but because I should have been a partner in these decisions all along." Helping Barbara brought unexpected healing, allowing me to preserve a connection to the family I had once expected to grow old with, while establishing new boundaries that honored my separate path forward. The support group I joined 3 months after the divorce became another crucial element of my recovery. Meeting weekly with others who had experienced similar betrayals normalized my feelings of grief, anger, and eventual acceptance. Initially a reluctant participant, I eventually became a group facilitator, helping newcomers navigate the early stages of shock and pain. Healing isn't linear, I would remind them. You'll have days when you feel strong and days when grief ambushes you from nowhere. Both are valid and necessary parts of the journey. My journal entries tracked this non-linear progress. On the anniversary of Eric's text, I wrote, "1 year ago today, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was beginning again. The pain hasn't disappeared entirely, but it has transformed into something useful, a reminder of my capacity for survival and growth. I no longer wake thinking of him first. I wake thinking of possibilities." These possibilities included an unexpected development 9 months into my new life. While consulting on the renovation of my condo's kitchen, I met Michael, an architect whose thoughtful questions and genuine interest in my input stood in stark contrast to Eric's dismissive attitude toward my preferences. Our professional relationship evolved gradually into friendship, then cautious dating. Unlike Eric, Michael was secure in his own accomplishments without needing to compete with mine. When I received an industry award for innovative investment strategies, he attended the ceremony and listened attentively to my acceptance speech, later asking insightful questions about my work. His own creative achievements in sustainable architecture complemented rather than threatened my success. "I admire how you rebuilt your life," he told me during a lakefront walk 6 months into our relationship. "That kind of resilience is rare." I moved slowly in this new relationship, maintaining my independence while allowing genuine connection. Michael respected my boundaries, never pushing for commitments I wasn't ready to make. We enjoyed each other's company without defining ourselves as a couple or making claims on each other's futures. The most profound insight from my journey came not from professional success or new relationships, but from the realization that true security couldn't be found in another person, regardless of how loving or trustworthy they seemed. Security came from within, from knowing that I could face the worst betrayal and not only survive but thrive. This understanding transformed how I approached every aspect of my life. I made decisions from a place of confidence rather than fear. I expressed my needs clearly rather than accommodating others at my own expense. I recognized red flags early rather than explaining them away. I valued myself too much to accept less than I deserved. The lessons of Eric's betrayal had been painful but invaluable. Trust should be earned continuously, not granted unconditionally. Financial independence is essential regardless of relationship status. Crisis reveals character, both others and your own. And perhaps most importantly, betrayal doesn't define you, but how you respond to it might. As I sat on my balcony watching another Lake Michigan sunset, I reflected on the woman I had become through this unexpected journey. The pain had sculpted me into someone stronger, wiser, and more authentic than I had ever been in the safety of my marriage. The future stretched before me, not defined by partnership or its absence, but by the limitless possibilities of a life reclaimed on my own terms. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after a betrayal? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my journey has resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about turning life's most painful moments into opportunities for growth. And remember, sometimes the most devastating text message can be the beginning of your most authentic life. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the strength to transform your own pain into power.